if you want to write a script, you can see many different scripts in this toolkit. In fact, terminology. DTrace has a terminology with prop, provider, and model. Prop is a short code inside your codes, and you will trace that. It written in functions. Provider is object, logical object which contains many different props. Model is name of application or kernel. It's a short scheme of how it works. In user space and kernel spaces, you do different kernel model loaded in the kernel, and different providers also load in the kernel work via libDTrace lib, and also libproc, and via command line to DTrace providers. It's available providers on FreeBSD, many different platforms depended by kind of providers because not ported yet on many different systems. Linux has a two, and FreeBSD and Solaris and OS X has many different providers to trace drivers and another. DTrace. This is, you can run a man1 and see command line front end. Is big program to compile and load application which written a D language. It's compiled to bytecode and load in kernel, which collect information and output in your terminal, and supported in many different platforms. But on OS X it's a bit patched. You need to run DTrace to generate a bytecode which added to binary section, special which after run we load in the kernel. This is first running application, DTrace L. If you run, we will see many different providers which are available in your system. Also, you can run DTrace L and flag-n and DTrace to see our available providers and functions. It's like avg and start and begin. D language isn't D language as we usually use. Is D language DTrace. It uses it as avg, which has a provider, module, function, and prop. Also predicates. Predicates is statement like if in C, and actions some like C, written code, structures, and another. Others it's supported all. First, the application. If you run DTrace, cscale, open entry, you will see which application opened a file just now. It take 1 second. Every 1 second, our data will copy it from kernel space to user space. It's need used to save many different things to change context between user space and kernel space memory to save your time. If you run a TCP dump, you will see in top TCP dump has many different resource will busy because it will copy from kernel to user space. You can write a profile with different tick and megahertz. How often you will see, you want to see output. Built-in variable. I read a few interesting variables from DTrace, which included in language. You can see args, bit, also prof. You can get name of function or name of provider via prof and timestamp. And timestamp is very interesting. If you use a timestamp, you will get a timestamp from starting and ending. Execute your code. If you use vtimestamp, it will on CPU. It's only which which data will work without time spent on use it with DTrace code only for execute functions, aggregate functions. You can write aggregate to see how many different ways count, scalar, sum, average, and quantiles your calls and another. Tracing applications. You can trace application via the PID provider. PID provider is very interesting thing to look at your application. If your application build it without user when statically defined traces, without modified code with the trace, you can see what it does. Via PID provider, it works on FreeBSD via leapfrog, and you will see which functions was scaled. For example, if you use MySQL, you can see what's request from client to MySQL and get information by connect without modification of code. If you have a laptop, you can download my code is special code which I have written for presentation and see different. I don't know internet exists this or not. Yeah, I'm a bit rest. You will download. Can I start? Okay. Everybody ready? Okay. This is first program. If you see, I highlighted green. This is lines for this simply code for length of fast and slow functions to see how many long time it does. It's pretty simple code. Is that special for looks at code and find troubles. This is first provider via PID provider without modification code. You run a PID and then dollar target. Target is number of processor PID and length and entry. You will see information from string if you will copy in str. Argument 0 is first argument, and you will get a timestamp. And self TS is self is object for functions. You can write it to find difference between times. This is next part, and it is end of code, and data will collect it in array and count and sum. Also, we will quantize a code to see quantities, how many long, depended by length of string to see output. Profile one time per 10 seconds and then exit. It works 10 seconds and then show output from end is like AFK syntax. This result. It was count 6 fast and 6 slow lines with 2 functions. This is distribution which can quantize it. You can see how long and how much lines was collected. It's very fast and very slow. First, yes, use the user can define your providers in your code. You need to write a simple file in D language, and then generate a header file, and add the prop, start and stop, or a different way, which function what it traces. You can add arguments, structures, and another. After run application, generated some code which contain macros, demo start, enable it, demo start, and demo stop, enable it, and demo stop. And you will run and include your code, and you will see when your function started and when it closed execution. Compile applications defined by system. If you use FreeBSD, Solaris, Linux, NetBSD, Unix, you need runs DTrace to generate object, which will attach on your bytecode in section sunv in your binary, which will load in kernel when you run application. It will load data before application execute main function in your code. And then is subject in one binary. That's all. In first script, if you download files, you can see that. DTrace supported many different options. So many options, I not will talk about that. It's a short introduction. And your props are available if you run DTrace L and add name of application as m-m, and you will get available providers and props. And you can collect data without pit provider. It will count in your kernel without different modification of code. DTrace demo, it's second demonstration with supporting arguments. You can write a string, int, 64, and structures, and any different kind of variables. You can see the official documentation and also depended by system to see what you want. And then same steps to get working code. Is a bit modification. I highlighted red is bit function, smart function to very slow code for collecting data and see difference between code because code so fast. This is DTrace code, which started to starting timestamp and change timestamp to 0 and printf when it started application, and also as preview collecting data, and need to copy and install a special function for getting from kernel to user space data with lines and strings, and then print it. The same as preview, not different. As result by execution. You also can evaluation your interface. If your interface unstable, you want to know, and many different admins or developers want to see which kind of version of and how it works and what stage and support you write stability via special pragma options and your touch attributes. And this is the code also show it how to work with structures. This is structure to see what code does, and this is first library in DTrace. You need to move that library in your dash user dash lib dash DTrace, and in DTrace it will be available to scripting and this path. And after run, you can translate your C functions arguments to DTrace and show in code, and then you can get it from short code in DTrace. That's all, like it is only structures. And results. Also, if you application level more convenient to writing code and Ruby, Node.js, and Perl, you want to see what your code does, but libDTrace supported via libUSDT is special external library, and I integrated that in NoSQL database, which uses Lua scripts, and it's named as Taranto. It's NoSQL in memory like Redis, but supported in different plugins and a bit popular in Russia. You also don't want files, but use a few slides I can fast and build it. You can write your providers and start it after running code, and you can stop at runtime. You need modified code, C code only for functions inside database. Is a big example. I wrote a function which showed also lines and which lines and their length, and reference more information, big list or presentation, and any questions if you have. Okay. That's all. That's all. Test codes you can download from link. That's okay. I can't because my environment was saved on my previous job, and that's broke after changing the job. But you can download and see README, it will work perfectly. Any questions? Okay. For FreeBSD, I recommend to use a DTrace toolkit to see what your applications does. It's pretty easy to understand, and you can write shortcuts and see many different codes to see in PHP. My friends uses in PHP, and I'm interested to integrate in applications. I'm more developer than looking for code to administrate it. Also, you can write in Apple instruments attach his external props and see what your application do in future and collect data and see latency in your code and your functions if you're interested in it. Who is next? Oh, I can't answer these questions because who is waiting DTrace is his guy, and many different freebie developers supporting Kakot and added new features. And when I did that presentation, I found around 5 or 7 bugs in the kernel modules and reports that, and it will fix it. But it not fix it yet in 10. It fix it in 10 stable, not in release. I know you can write Mark Johnson to more information. That's all. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Please take out your trash when you leave the room. The next talk will be at 1 p.m., so in 35 minutes. Hast du Julian schon gesehen?